What is up, people? What is going on? It is Keenan. I am Jim Keenan, known as Keenan, here kicking off episode 6 of The Word. I am super excited. Today's show is going to be a good one. It's straight up all about sales. So if you are looking to grow your sales numbers, you don't want to miss this one. It's going to be fat. We're talking about how to deal with difficult customers. And I know, or prospects, and I know we've all dealt with them. Good morning, Kiki. How are you, my girl?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Super pumped about this show. The more interaction we have with the audience this time, I think the better. It's really kind of a style-driven conversation.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we have some killer guests today. Our guests are Anthony Iannarino. I love this guy. He is a sales powerhouse. The man, if you don't know him, then I'm going to argue you are not into selling, because he's a guy you need to know. And with him is Tim Ohai. Tim is also a powerhouse. These guys know selling. They are constantly listed on the list of the top salespeople, top sales blogs, etc. So this is going to be an awesome show. So to kick it off, I have kids. I think you met them on the last show. And one of the things I got to experience by having kids is SpongeBob. I freaking love SpongeBob. Kiki, do you ever watch SpongeBob?
Occasionally. I don't have kids yet, and it was a little bit after my time.
So what prompted you to watch it? Do you ever watch it? Why have you watched it?
When I was babysitting, I would watch it, and I actually just found out that the guys from, I think it was Mr. Show, those creators actually write SpongeBob, so I have a lot more respect for it now. It's like, I feel like there's some dirty humor under some of those jokes.
There's crazy humor under those jokes. I love SpongeBob. It's entertaining. I watch it with my kids on around. Go figure, right? But it is. I love it. But one thing I love about SpongeBob, if you don't watch the show, is SpongeBob is just fanatical about his job. And what, he's always happy. He's always happy. Nothing gets him down. And his passion for his job is just beyond reproach. The guy loves his job. But in SpongeBob, we saw a really cool video that I think spells out this idea of the pain-in-the-ass customer. Should we roll it?
We sure should.
Is in between those two exchanges between bubble pants and SquarePants was SpongeBob was devastated. After he felt he forgot the pickle the first time, he questioned himself. The rest of the show was about him struggling with his sense of self and the idea that he forgot the pickle, he doesn't know how to make a Krabby Patty anymore, he's not as good as he thought he was, and he mopes around the house, and he comes into work and he makes Krabby Patties without the bun or with putting metal in it, or just he doesn't know what to do. He's just completely sidetracked, right? It was a riot. The guy's devastated. And so what I liked about this is it really helps us understand the impact of when customers aren't working with us and when customers are difficult to work with. It can affect us too. It's not just the customer and not closing the deal, but we start to wonder, am I a bad salesperson? Am I not delivering the value that I need to? And it really gets us questioning ourselves. So we didn't want to put that in, but there was another great piece of that. What did you think of that, Kiki? What did you think of it?
I thought it was great. I was doing a lot of research for this show, and I just realized there's just so many different ways that people can handle these types of situations, so many different styles. And like you said, SpongeBob is the eternal optimist. The guy demands this horrible order, and he's like, got it, and comes back. And I mean, I'd like to think I'm a SpongeBob versus like.
You are the SpongeBob. You are the SpongeBob.
versus like I've seen Gary Vee had a video about this recently on how to deal with rude customers, and I admire him. I think it's more like your style, Keenan, just like, all right, I see this as a challenge, bring it on, baby. And then some people, you know, I do see the point where it's gonna tough prospects might be a tough customer, and it's more cost than it's worth in the man hours and the mental health.
Yep, good call. And I think that's a great segue. So when we're dealing with difficult customers, we have two choices. One is we can just not deal with them, and we can kick them to the curb. And that is a real option, and we're going to talk about that one. But the other one is to really figure out and get to the core of why are they being difficult? What's going on? And so today's show, in our time with Tim and Anthony, is going to be all about digging into that, right? How can we engage with difficult prospects? Right? How can we overcome their objections? How can we get them to connect with us? And so before I invite them in, I want to talk about why are customers difficult? One of the main reasons is they don't see the value. And so they're frustrated, they're on the defense, they're putting up their guard because in many cases, salespeople have interrupted them. We've interrupted their day, we've interrupted their call, we've interrupted them through email, and we're asking something from them, and they're frustrated, they're irritated, because they don't see the value in our interruption. So we got to understand that many times we're the cause of them being difficult. So we're going to break that down. Another thing we want to break down is sometimes people are just bitter. They're just bitter people for whatever particular reason. And bitter people don't know they're bitter. So as you sit there, some of you are bitter, it's time for a check. How do you treat people? How do you treat salespeople? How do you treat your neighbor? If you're just a jerk, you're a jerk. You need to cut it out. But even jerks can be gotten through because jerks have family, they have friends, they have people who like them, so clearly they're not a jerk to everybody. So we're going to spend some time thinking about how do you disarm people who just are nasty or disrespectful or self-absorbed or narcissistic, and that comes out in the selling approach. And sometimes they're jerks because we're not hearing them, or they truly just don't have an interest, or they're not interested, or they're just not willing to work with us. And so we have to understand how to deal with them as well. The key, though, no matter how you break it down, or what the motive to someone's difficulty is as a salesperson, it's our job to work with them. If they're not working with us or we're not working with them, that's not a sale, and you're never going to get to the end. You have information they need that will help them make a good decision, or you should. You have information that will help them drive their business, or you should. But in the same token, they have information you need because their business is different than the other customers you're working with, the other prospects. So you have to come together. We have to work together to make it work. And so this is why I really think this is such an important show, is it will help us bring us together so that we can provide a better solution, better decisions, whether it is, oh, it's not a good fit, it's a great fit, or I need this yesterday. The end result doesn't matter as long as we get to the right end result. So that's what this is all about. Kiki, thoughts? Anything you want to add?
I was thinking about, like you were saying, just the different reasons why they would be shutting you out. And I think I was reading a lot about emotional intelligence when I was preparing for this segment. And really, I think you're right. Some benefit out of this relationship, but you're doing it for yourself as well. So what can you change? You can change yourself. You should stop, take a second, evaluate, figure out what your emotional intelligence is, how you handle stressful situations, and if it's not the best way, maybe that's something you can work on. But I think it's really comes all down to analyzing yourself and figuring out what's right for you and how you can handle these situations in the future.
I'm with you. Good call. So what do you think we get our team of experts in here? What do you think? Hold on, don't do it yet.
All right.
Don't do it yet. Because the minute you take that mic, that mute off them, they're going to start chirping. And I want all the control in the world. Because there's going to be no lack of input or voice on this. So the two guests are, again, Anthony Iannarino and Tim Ohai. And I feel like pressing that button to get them on the show is like pressing the button to the rabbit in a dog race. Here's Rusty opening the gate, and boom, out they shoot. That's what I feel like. So, all right, I'm a little anxious. So here we go. You ready to press the button?
I sure am.
These are going to come out. They're going to come out.
And people in the audience, if you want to join the conversation, #SalesJolt.
Yes, let's see. Talk. Let's see what we got. Okay, here we go. Press the button. Oh, he's talking before the mute was even taken off. You see that? He's talking. He's still in mute. I love it.
I don't have them.
I'm taking the show from Jim. It's now my show. You belong to me. It's The Word with Anthony Iannarino. You're going to need another Red Bull.
It's plunging already. The ratings are plunging.
Hey, dude, real fast, as a fellow SpongeBob fan, I just got to know, are you actually wearing pants? Because that's part of the show, too.
Oh, that's a secret, my man. And maybe if you're lucky, maybe.
That's why we had to ban SpongeBob in my house, because actually my 3-year-old daughter started dressing like Patrick. No lie.
No way. Seriously?
Yeah,
all the more reason not to ban it. I love it. Let the kids roll with it.
All right, where are we going, man? Where do you want to go first?
All right, so guys, give me your thoughts. I'll give you each a couple of minutes to tee up your thoughts on the broad subject. If you want to address the SpongeBob video, if you want to address the topic as a whole, each of you frame it as you see it and take it away. Why don't we start with you, Tim?
Yeah, okay, so I kind of operate with 3 kind of categories when I think about this stuff. One is the opportunity itself, one is the client or the customer or the prospect, and the other is you. So, you know, broad stroke, you're going to have a tough time if you're just not relevant to begin with. And there's nothing anyone can do. It's not personal. It's just not a good fit. And too many salespeople waste their time and energy trying to chase things that just aren't a good deal. And then when it's the client, we'll talk about that in a bit, but there's just some things you can do and there's some things you cannot do because you can't fix crazy. And then lastly, when the problem's you, man, how do you begin with that? I love where you went, Kiki, with the emotional intelligence thing, because if you're not fully aware of who you are and what you're bringing to the conversation, you can actually wreck a great opportunity.
Excellent. Great frame. Anthony, my man, how about you?
I'm going to give you the easy frame. I won't go into dominator hierarchies and actualizer hierarchies and what we know about social organisms and cultures. I think I just did, though. Basically, there are people who, as a business has a culture and there's a certain maturity in the way a business operates. And some are more mature business people and they're easy to do business with because of the way the culture's been set up. And then there are other businesses that are driven by a dominator hierarchy where there's a lot of fear and a lot of use of force and a lot of power and not a lot of persuasion. They end up making really difficult customers and they end up making really difficult contacts to deal with because of all the fear and all the bitterness and all the bad attitude that's going on inside their world. And if you just heard me say those words, you immediately have those customers that come to mind because you know the ones I'm talking about. You walk in and it's palpable. You can feel it right away. But that's the world that we live in, and we have to find a way to help our customers. We take them as they lie. Where we find them, that's what we've got. So you have to make some decisions about, is it worth engaging over here when we're on the low end of that maturity continuum, or is it worth spending time somewhere else? Because there's some people, no matter what you do, Tim said you can't fix crazy. There's some people that aren't right for you, and you can't make them happy no matter what you do. And if your company has a different culture and a different vibe, it just ain't going to work.
You know, you nailed that, Anthony, and I want to take 2 seconds to zero in on something you said. And this is the idea of some cultures have a dominating or difficult to work with culture, and I've always found that fascinating because I'm not a very religious guy, but somewhere along the line, someone drilled it into my head, treat others the way you want to be treated, and I've always found it fascinating that it's almost inevitably these companies that are difficult to work with have sales teams themselves, and they're reaching out to you, and they're trying to make quota. I think to myself, are you kidding me? Are you fucking trying to do this to us? Do you want your prospects or customers treating your sales team this way? Is it how you want them to do business with you? Are you serious? So I found it fascinating. I think it's a great point. So with that said then, guys, let's start in the very beginning of the sales cycle, right? We got to find them where they lay. You can't fix crazy. What should salespeople do out of the gate, just right out of the gate, to minimize the impact of a difficult customer prospect?
I think right off the bat, you got to do your homework. You got to do your research. You got to look at what you can out there. If you've got a marketing function that's actually helping you, get them to provide what you need. It's going to be different if you're more complex B2B selling versus more transactional B2C. But generally, I find that the salespeople who don't do well are the ones who ignore the homework and just show up and throw up.
Okay. So I want to push you on that. I agree. But we hear that term, do your homework. And to me, it's trite. Give them something more specific. Where do they do that? Or what are they looking for specifically?
So it depends on what your business is. But let's just take kind of the normal B2B sales cycle. If everybody's talking about social selling, to me, social selling is probably better to be said social prospecting, because there's so much information via LinkedIn. There's so much information via the internet out there about the actual company if it's publicly traded, to actually go research what's important to them, what they're focused on doing, and what they're trying to tackle at an organizational level, so you can get a sense of the pressure that individuals are under. If you get a sense of the pressure that an individual is under, then you can develop a point of view to walk up to them about and say, hey, listen, I'm understanding your company's trying to do X, or the industry's going Y. I've either got information that can help you understand that, or I've been helping people address those kind of challenges. And you've got to come in the door with a little more information other than, hi, my name is X, and I'm representing company Y. Let me tell you about us.
I like that. That was really good. Anthony, what are your thoughts?
Couple things here. First and foremost, if you're going to be a responsible salesperson, you're going to run a responsible sales organization, you need to protect yourself from being so desperate that you have to take what I call a nightmare client. You need a full pipeline. So if you want to not have to take anybody's business, if you want the ability to walk away and say, we're just not going to jive together, it's not going to happen, you got to have a deep pipeline so that you can walk away from any one particular deal. And where I see salespeople get hung up on, I got to have this client, they spend a lot in my space, they're going to be my number. The challenge with that is you're going to have a horrible experience. They're never going to value you. They're going to grind your people down. They're going to destroy your culture. And I'll share a story with you about that at some point as we talk about this. But prospect like the devil. Make sure you got a pipeline so when you bump into these immature businesses that you can walk away from it. And then let me add one piece to this. In your first visit or your first couple of visits, as you're doing discovery, you know when someone's expectations are totally out of line. You know that. And you can feel that when they start talking about wanting to change and not wanting to invest. And you know that when they start telling you that the only problem they have in the world is the vendor that they're working with or the supplier they're sitting with right now because they're stupid, they don't know how to get the job done, they're having all these problems, and you're like, yeah, they're dissatisfied, I can win them, this is great. But listen, if they're saying that about the competitor and they've been through 3 or 4 times around this loop, it ain't your competitor. It's the fact that their expectations are so out of line. And a grown-up salesperson with a pipeline says, I'm going to call you on that because the fact of the matter is it ain't us, it's you, and you're going to have to decide whether or not it's really worth it for you to change. And that's just the way it is. So that's the 2 big pieces I'd say right out of the gate.
Okay. So one of the things that I think you're spot on. And I think this is also complex. Why do you think salespeople have a hard time doing the things we're suggesting right out of the gate? So why do you think they even get out of the gate wrong?
Anthony, you go first.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. One, they think prospecting is hard. They hate the telephone. They've been fed a bunch of lies that social selling and inbound marketing is going to do all their work for them. They don't want to do the heavy lifting of prospecting, literally, which you could do in an hour a day and build a massively strong pipeline. And so they get to the point where they're desperate. Add on top of that, they got a sales manager that's not giving them what they need. They're not giving them the coaching, not giving them the direction, what I would call mindset, skill set, toolkit. They need all 3 of those things. They're missing those pieces. So they end up in a spot where they're desperate. And desperation is where you end up with bad customers who won't value you enough to let you make money and who grind you down because they're unhappy with the way that they're running their own businesses predominantly.
So what I'm hearing from you, and this is really interesting, and I'm really digging where you're going. What you're saying is there's really no such thing as a bad customer. There's only such thing as a desperate sales organization or salesperson who accepts or tolerates a bad customer. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
Oh! Hey, Kiki, give me a drop!
Oh, sorry.
She was watching SpongeBob. Sorry, there.
Oh, dude, that is so spot on. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of dating. That guy who just so desperately walks into a bar, and every chicken in it smells that he's desperate. And so he takes whatever he can take because he just doesn't have that confidence that oh, my goodness gracious. dude, I think you're spot on. So I'm going to just spell this out again because anybody listening, I want you to hear it. It is about bad customers and not bad customers. Bad customers are the result of you as a salesperson and your sales organization being too desperate that you just can't walk away from someone who treats you like shit. That is spot on. Tim, what are your thoughts?
Well, let's just go down the rabbit hole further and talk a little more about what Anthony was just breaking down. So there's two kind of elements to this. One is what's going on inside the salesperson. The other one is what's going on inside that company. And to your point, you just brought up this idea that the company doesn't have focus on what it's actually trying to do. It's just telling people to go hit a number. That's not telling people to go be successful. That's just creating stress. And they're going to wind up with all kinds of reasons why they can't go sell. And some of it will be absolutely legitimate and some of it will be total BS. But the idea that the company isn't focused enough on what's happening at a sales conversation level is massive. We see over and over and over big companies, and I can't say their names publicly, but I can tell you that they struggle in how they support the sales conversation. And there's a lot of problems in the system itself. Poor strategy, poor tools, poor equipment. I mean, my favorite is marketing comes up and says, hey, we want to help. And they generate all this crap that winds up sitting in a box in somebody's garage because they can't use it in real conversations, right? It's just, it's frustrating. But on the other side, you've got salespeople who aren't really thinking, to your point, Anthony, around the confidence and what's required to go do the work. The problem is both they may be struggling with just a work ethic. That happens. But more often than not, there's just a lack of confidence. And the reason there's a lack of confidence is because they haven't been equipped and enabled to go out there. They're not getting coached properly from the manager. They don't have enough of a network of friends within their own company to share information. Say, hey, try this. I did this the other day. It's working. So there's not enough of that happening. People are too busy, too focused on trying to hit a number, not have great conversations.
All right, okay, really like this. So I'm going to bring us down even a little further, right? And Tim, you've sort of gravitated towards the organization. So I'm going to ask you a question for leadership, right? For the head of the sales organization and the sales manager, right? Outside of the method, until your sales organization has a pipeline big enough and revenue big enough that you can tell the difficult customer to go screw themselves, you assume they have to deal with them. Assume they have to get over that hump. Assume they just want to. What practical advice would you give to a sales organization, to a sales leader, to help them deal with that difficult customer who won't give them their time, doesn't share information, is making a big deal out of things that aren't important, changing their criteria, all those things we struggle with?
So there's two things going on, Keenan, because I don't want to go past this assumption that the company's doing the right thing. Even if you're a small company, if you're not really crystal clear, laser focused on the problem you're solving, and you understand how that problem works, and the way I test people is I'll go to leaders, I'll go to sales reps, I'll go, here's $100, put it on the table. Talk about your customers and their problems for 30 minutes without once mentioning you, mentioning your products or services or your company. Go.
Yes.
People can't do it. I'll go $20 bill for those who don't want the $100 one, and I'll go talk 10 minutes for $20. The typical person goes 3.5 minutes. That's about the most they get before they start spewing all this crap about their company and their stuff, and they don't know their customers. So I even challenge how well people know their customers before they even start this whole conversation, because that is so fundamental. If people aren't doing that right, then all the other stuff won't work.
Love it. Okay? So Anthony, he addressed the corporation and the sales managers. By the way, I agree with you. Anthony, what about the individual sales guy? Okay? What can grab a piece of it, give us something that the individual sales guy is sitting there and he's got some difficult prospect on the phone. He's been talking to him or he's got connected to him somehow and he sees him as an opportunity or a prospect. And they're not giving him information. They're not responding to coming to the meetings, but they return the email, so I'll do it again, and they won't give him information, and they're beating him up on price or whatever. What can they do to turn it around?
I'm going to go back to something that you said in the introduction about failure, and I never thought SpongeBob would be the role model for our sales hangout here, but I like that. So, this idea of just being racked with pain because of your failure, and as a salesperson, we fail. We fail a lot. We're dealing with difficult personalities. We're dealing with one of the most difficult jobs that you could ever have. So we have all this stuff going on. You first have to admit that it is your fault. Whatever's happening, whatever you're getting back from the customer, it's because you're giving something out and they're responding to what you're giving them. And so you have to accept that that's your failure. You're doing something wrong. And once you can accept that you failed, now you're empowered to change. And if I want to change, I'm trying to think about how I want to change Jim. If I wanted to get him to wear all blue somehow, I don't know how that would happen. But I would have to change something so he would have something to respond to. I can't just go grab Jim and say, look, I need you to change. So we give him this stuff like, hey, I'd really like to talk to you. I really need this information. I really want to help you with this. And when they keep getting the same response where nothing comes back, you have to change. And I would tell you, my recommendation for people listening to this is change what you're doing. And you go something like this. I don't know what it sounds like for you, but it's like, hey, Keenan, I know you were really interested in working on this project together. I've reached out to you. I'm trying to get this information so I can get you the things that I promise. And what I'm afraid of is that if you don't give me those things, then I'm going to push your timeline out. I'm going to push my timeline out, and I don't want to fail you. Tell me what's going on there and how I can help you, and tell me where this sits on your priority so I know how I can best serve you right now. And you're just going to have to get vulnerable and tell them, this is what I'm afraid of that's going to happen, and ask. In a lot of cases, we're asking a question that's hard for the customer to give us the answer to. It's difficult for them to know. Half of the time, let me say this, 90% of the time when the customer is having trouble changing, it's because it's so complex and so difficult of a problem they're trying to solve. It's easier not to solve the problem. I've already learned how to deal with the devil I know. So you see all this resistance, and what you're really getting is this thing where I'm afraid to change. I've got all these concerns, and you haven't made me 100% confident that we're going to be able to work through this thing together. So I'm just going to put the brakes on and stall this for a while. So only the salesperson can change in that. And what I hear from salespeople is like, how do I get them to do this? It's how do you get you to change? Because you keep asking them for the same thing 11 times in exactly the same way. That's you being stupid. Change your approach so they have something different to respond to.
And let me jump on that real quickly, because Anthony, you totally cracked something open in this idea that, we have to remember, when I talk about how well do you understand the problem of your customers, you've got to understand the unintended consequences your solution brings to their problems. So you may be selling something small, but it's going to make a major block for some other department, some other group. It can be legal, it can be compliance, it can be HR, it can be some IT, who knows. But the problem gets worse because you're injecting something that you don't understand the bigger picture. And so that's another reason tough prospects, tough customers don't want to talk to you.
Love it. The idea of change. Notice what you both addressed. Change. Anthony, you addressed change on the salesperson's methodology or approach. You've got to change what you're doing. And then, Tim, you basically said, look, this is going to change their world. Even if it seems small to us, it's going to be a big change to them. I love that. Let me real quick, folks. This is some good stuff going on. Sales Jolt is the hashtag. Kiki B is watching this. Watching. If you have questions, jump in. Don't be shy. Some folks are already on it. Let's see some good questions. Let's keep this baby rolling. So I want to throw something out to you guys. Anthony, you talked about changing, and the salesperson has to change what they do. My belief system is when it's starting early, you're dealing with the difficult customers, or prospect, I should say, is they can't be a prospect unless they commit something, right? But we don't just say, IBM's a prospect, and I don't talk to anybody, nobody gets my call, and nobody at least gives me something. Yes, they respond to an email, or yes, they'll have a meeting with me, or yes, they'll do something. Can we agree on that? There's some connection?
Yeah, and I'll even go further. I don't even think they're a prospect until they agree that they need to change.
All right, I'll go with that. But in this idea that we're dealing with a difficult prospect, at least with the lowest bar, they've committed to something. And one of the things that I've found that I share with my clients is salespeople have to hold the customer accountable, the prospect accountable for what they said they would do. So the prospect says, yes, I'll meet with you, and they don't show up. But the prospect says, yes, give me a call in 3 weeks and we'll reconnect. The prospect says, yes, I'll take a look at something. If they're not doing it, one of the things I share is, guys, send them a note and says, I'm confused. You said, and it's not happening.
Two of those things weren't commitments. Two of those weren't commitments, and this is where I would say salespeople get crooked. Call me in 3 weeks. You made the commitment. They didn't make a commitment.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And I'll review your material. They didn't make a commitment. When you say
your material is absolutely, I'll do something.
It's a bullshit commitment. The commitment is I'll sit down with you after you do. If you don't give me your time and we're not locked in, I'm not calling it a commitment. And this is where salespeople accept those things that are too soft. That's not a commitment. You tell me they're difficult. It's because you're letting them off the hook early on. And it's, Tim, I'm sending you this thing that you wanted to see. What's the best time for us to talk on Thursday so I can review it with you?
Yeah, I like that. Absolutely.
That's it. And that's a commitment. You don't give me that, we don't have a commitment. I have what Neil Rackham in Spin Selling, 1988, page 64 to 67, was called a continuation. Go get the book, read it. 64 to 67, you don't have to read anything else. But without that commitment, you got nothing.
I agree. But even when they make that commitment and they don't show, salespeople don't hold them accountable.
Yeah, you got to
They
hold
don't
them accountable.
say, you said, I love this. I see work over and over and over. I'm confused. You said, and now it's not happening. What's going on? Tim, what are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I always determine that the strength of the need is determined by the strength of the action. So if somebody's just doing minimal level effort, even if it's a commitment, but it's minimal, it's probably a minimal need to them.
Yes.
It's a minimal priority. So that, two things. One, I can say, oh crap, this is a lousy deal, move on. Or I say, man, I need to figure out and do my homework on what's going on to elevate why this is more important than they think it is. Because the chances are, and I got huge amounts of empathy for the buyer. The buyer is so busy, so crazy, so involved in so many different things that they don't think through how this stuff is all working because they're going from meeting to meeting to meeting and email to email to email. So if you can't elevate the conversation, and here's the hardest part, people do their homework and then they want to show up and throw up. They want to dump it all on the table and they don't have another conversation. They don't ask good questions. They don't open this thing up to get the other person thinking, and then they're prepared to share, to illuminate, and to expand the perspective, not take it over. And again, you get eager salespeople who jump in. They get a whiff of commitment, a whiff of action, and as soon as they grab it, they just seize it and grab it like a pit bull, and they just won't let go. And the person's like, wait a minute, I was just trying to have a good conversation here. I was just starting to, figure out what we're talking about, and now you're freaking me out, dude. You need to go get therapy. Leave me alone.
So
I
how
think
do
I
you?
said that to you when we had dinner about the therapy thing. It's interesting. It's coming up.
Whenever Anthony and I get together, therapy often comes up. Just yeah, right.
So how do you know when? All right, so I like this. This is all great stuff. How do we know when it's time to let them go? So outside of the point that Anthony says, look, if you got a pipeline, they're being difficult, cut them. But there's a lot of gray area there. So let's say you have a huge pipeline and business is going great, and you've got a customer that's not all that cooperative. How do you know when is the time to say, you know what, this isn't worth my time, inject?
So I use this whole concept called problem-centric, an idea that the problem is the center of everything you're going to do. And it's either a problem to make pain go away or a problem to achieve something awesome, but it's still a problem to the buyer. A lot of salespeople hate the word problem. It's funny. I once had a client, a fairly large consumer products company, and they hate it. They were like, we will not use the word problem. And then I went and interviewed their top customer, the senior VP of category of one of their top clients. And I talked to them and I said, hey, by the way, in your internal meetings, what do you guys use? Because we use problem, because it is to us. Because if it's not a problem, I don't have time to put my people onto it. We're busy with our stuff. So if you understand the problem, you will recognize, number one, if the problem can't be solved, hey, either scale back, sell something smaller and move on, or if it can't be solved, move on completely. Don't even try to scale back. It's not
But
your.
what if you can solve it? What if you can solve it? And this is what I tell people too. I've always said that salespeople should know long before the customer does whether or not this solution can deliver the product and value they want, and it's their idea to get the customer to catch up to them. So what if you?
So Keenan, there's a real risk in that, right? There's a risk in that because there's a piece of this that says, I have to validate that you want to solve that problem. Mm-hmm. Right? So maybe I do see the problem. I see a lot of salespeople saying, oh, it's there. It's so obvious. This is huge. I'm putting in my forecast. We'll close it by the end of the month. This is going to be awesome. And it's like the buyer hasn't even figured out if it's a priority. So I go back to if it's when it's solving a problem isn't just about does it exist. It's actually does somebody actually want to address that? And to the point we were talking earlier, the commitments that they're trying to make to address that. Ideally, they're already trying to solve it on their own.
But here's the interesting point, right? And this is to me one of the biggest crux in sales, right? A customer doesn't know what they don't know, and so it's my job to help them see it. An example I use all the time is before there was a plane. If I said to someone, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about your travel across country," and they don't know anything about a plane, and they won't give me the time to help them show them what it is, How long do I say, fine, forget it, you don't need it? It's like that cartoon where the guy's got the Gatling behind the tent. Have you ever seen that cartoon? He's got a Gatling and it goes up to the king who's fighting with swords. And he says, I don't have time for a salesman, I got a war to fight. Yeah, he's fighting with swords. It's one of the best ever. And the point is, if that king, no matter how hard I try, will not give me the time, and I've got a Gatling, when do I say, fine, let him fail? Because there is a white space between knowing he's got a problem he wants to solve versus I don't know what I don't know.
Okay, so but let's say you ask if there's somebody who does recognize the problem, like as a buyer side of this, right? So that's an easy path to go down. It's when they don't understand the problem. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and when you quit trying to get them to see it because they won't work with you.
Okay, and I want to bring Anthony in on this one because I've been talking a lot. Let's talk about the third idea. That what if they do recognize the problem, but it's not that big of a priority? Or to solve that problem creates a bunch of unintended consequences or complexity they don't want to deal with.
Or they don't know what they don't know, and they're not giving you the time to help them see it. See what I'm saying? I think that's the big.
But I want to make sure we're separate because salespeople have to be able to recognize the difference between what you just described and the difference between people who are they get it, they understand it, especially senior executives, C-level folks. You finally get a chance to talk to them, and you're eager and you're excited, and here's a senior job title, and you're like, we're going to go because I know the problem's there, and I've talked to their direct reports. This is really important to them. And then that C-level person sits there and goes, yeah, but we're not interested.
All right, Anthony, run. The floor is yours, baby.
I heard Harvey McKay give a speech a few years ago, and when he got his first job in sales, he was having a tough time getting prospects on the phone. And he went to an old, grizzled veteran, in the sales bullpen days. And he said, when do you give up on a prospect? And the old veteran just looked at him and said, they die or you die. and I think that's right. So if you can help somebody, so somebody's drowning and you happen to be a lifeguard and you're walking by and you're like, I could save that person's life, but they're going to be difficult. And if you've ever seen anybody be rescued from drowning, you could get the person rescuing them at as great a risk as the person who is drowning because they flail around and they resist it. They're panicked and they don't know. So I think if you have an obligation and if you can create value for people, you don't give up. You don't go away. If you have what I call the dream client, and it has to be a dream client, this is somebody who's going to perceive that value once we get through their latent dissatisfaction and teach them what they need to know to be able to understand that. But you keep calling, you keep changing your approach, you keep doing whatever's necessary. I called a client in the staffing business 75 weeks in a row. The 76th week, he picked up the phone, furious that I'm on his phone. 76 weeks. This is the old days, man. I had an index card with this guy's name on it.
That's awesome.
On the 76th week, he says, you've called me 1,000,000 times. And he didn't say that in a way that he was flattering me with my persistence. And I said, well, actually, this is 76. And he said, well, it feels like 1,000,000 to me, but I got an order. If you get in your car right now and drive over, I'll give you my...
Oh, no.
It froze on it. That's all right.
What do you get for giving up? You don't win a deal by giving up and going away. Now, listen, your time is limited. You got to protect it. But keep calling and hammering away. Keep changing your approach. Call somebody else and say, listen, I see this and you don't see it. Give me 20 minutes so that I can show you what I see that you don't see. Let me tell you another story really quickly. I've got a friend. I talked to him the other day. He wanted me to give a speech at his kickoff event. And I didn't want to give the speech that he wanted me to give. And I called him and said, I don't want to give the speech that you want me to give. I've worked with your organization. I see something different. He said, that's cute. That's funny. I'm paying you. You work for me. Just take my check and give my speech. And I said, all right, so I lost that round. So I asked one of his guys to go to him and ask him if he would please intervene on my behalf. Because I saw something that he didn't see and I needed to share it. And he went and he just got his face smashed in carrying my argument for me. So finally, I was speaking for Abbott Labs, and I had to go to Los Angeles. And on the way back, I had to go through Phoenix, where he lived. And I called him, and I said, listen, you have to meet me at the airport. You have to let me buy you dinner. You have to let me share what I see, because it will totally change what we're going to do at the kickoff. And if I'm wrong, I'll give the speech that you want me to give, but let me at least pitch you. And he picked me up at the airport, spent the night at his house. He had another VP come over. His wife cooked us dinner. And we changed the whole thing that we did at the sales kickoff because I was persistent enough to insist that he let me try to help him. And that's your job as a salesperson. You don't get paid for giving up. You don't become a trusted advisor from walking away from difficult problems. You get in there and you might get your face smashed in, but you stick with it and you win deals because that's what we do.
Well, and you knew the problem to solve too, right? You knew what your problem was.
I did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you know what? I think that is a fantastic. I love the story. Made me laugh. I think it's a fantastic way to end this. What I want to make sure folks understand, and I really like how Tim added to that, you knew the problem, right? If a customer is going to prevent you from helping them see the problem, going back to the Gatling cartoon, you've got to look that up, by the way, Tim. It is a riot.
I will.
It is the best sales cartoon in the world. If your customer has to understand that you need them to help them. And if they won't let you help, if this king will not at least give you 2 minutes of his time to realize what that Gatling is, and you're telling his underlings how it works, and it's better than a sword, he just won't hear it, you've got to go. You've got to go. Or as Anthony said, I think it's valid. Manage your time as such that when you have a free moment, when you can incorporate that in, stay in the game, but work a different angle. Like go to his enemy and sell the Gatling. We start shooting at him, come back and say, that thing that I was trying to sell you? Yeah, I sold it to him first, bonehead, right? So I love it.
You got one of these, man. You can reach anybody anytime. You know what else you can do? I did this with a client a few months ago myself. I couldn't convey the idea well enough. I just shot a video. I walked him through it on video, and I sent the video to him. Worked perfectly.
So that's a great call. I'm going to throw that to you, Anthony, if you're not using it. Tim, if you're not using it. To my folks in Colorado Springs, use BombBomb. It is a video application that allows you to shoot video right in Gmail. You don't have to do it separate. You download the plugin, and you click a button, and boom, you shoot a video, and it goes off an email. It's pretty slick. So great idea, Anthony. Great idea. All right, Kiki, what time is it? What do we got?
We are at the point where we're going to go to cut it out, buddy.
Cut it out. So, guys, cut it out is one of my favorite parts of the show. Cut it out is where I talk to salespeople about something they're doing they need to stop doing. Today's cut it out is stop selling. One of my favorite quotes that I've come up with recently is, if you're selling when you're selling, you're not selling. This is perfect for this meeting here. Nobody cares about your product. Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about your quota. Nobody cares about your monthly goals. All they care about is solving problems. And if you're not focused on their problems, you're not talking about their business, if you can't answer or deliver on Tim's $100 challenge, you're selling. And nobody wants to be sold. They want to be helped. So if you're selling while you're selling, cut it out. Nobody wants it. Enough. You're not a salesperson. Stop it. Gentlemen, your thoughts on that? Cut it out.
I just like seeing you all amped up all the time. How many Red Bulls is that for you today? Like 8?
A half.
Really?
So,
he actually calms down Anthony as he drinks more, because that's how ADD works. And I know, because I have the same thing. I'm all about the caffeine too. Hey, I would totally agree with what you just said. To me, I love the way Dave Ramsey says it. You're there to serve, and that for me is how I live with my customers. If I'm going in to work with somebody, I'm there to serve them. If I can't serve them, they don't want to be served. It changes the whole dynamic. But if I go in there to try and take, if I go in there to try and grab, they'll sense that right off the bat, and it will only create stress, and it'll poison the relationship. But if I'm really focused on collaborating with them, that then impacts from the very beginning how we're going to work together, because ultimately that's what I want. I don't want just to get the deal closed. I want to establish a collaborative relationship that we can work together ongoing, because I want loyalty, I want consistency, and I want to bring the opportunity at least to work with you on solving other problems.
Boom. Anthony, your thoughts on cut it out?
So I got to just talk about our relationship, in public, maybe for the first time. It's going to get heavy here. I apologize. When Jim and I talk, when we have a call, it normally goes, about an hour and 30 minutes?
Yeah. Easy.
And the whole time it would be touching the topics that you most don't want to talk about. So it'll be about race. It'll be about politics. If Jim has his way, it's about sex most of the time. But we end up having these conversations. We don't talk for less than an hour and a half, and it's like a brother. So we have this great argument, even though we both are very, very closely aligned. We have these great fun arguments. So I'm going to take the other side just because Jim's my brother and we can get away with this. So the other side of this is you've done all the work that you need to do. At some point, you got to start pitching people. And I don't think there's any better way to say it than just saying, hey, you know what? Now that we know this, I'd like to pitch you my idea. Just tell them you're going to pitch them. At some point, they're waiting for you to pitch them. You've done all the good discovery work. And so Jim's right. If you're selling, when you're selling, you're not selling at the beginning of the process. But at some point, you got to step in and start solving people's problem. And there's a time to pitch. So cut out the not selling. When it's time to pitch, and help them get the vision. Because a lot of times when you're helping them develop the latent dissatisfaction that Jim talked about, they don't have the vision. You got to install that vision for them. If they had the vision, they'd have already solved the problem. So at some point, you got to hit them with that and share it so that they can move forward.
You know what? I'm like, I got a big hug for you, baby. Right here, it comes. Boom! Got some brother love. My brother from another mother. That was actually fantastic advice. And what I've always said is, you'll know when it's time. You'll know when it's time. When you've done enough of that and they understand the problem's big enough and they're curious how to solve it, as Tim says they want to solve it, then, yeah, they call it the pitch, the sell. It will happen. It's just going to, because I call it delivering the solution, right? So we can put any mantra on it, but when you get there, okay, yes, I got to sell. I got to frame the solution in a manner that the vision gets them excited. The change is important. And so, yes, I think you're spot on, and it's, I think, a piece that I've missed. But in the end, when you're there, it's not a sale. I'm just delivering you the solution now. We've all agreed on where we are, what the problem is, what we want at the end, how it works. And so eventually you say, how? And that's where the pitch comes in. So I think that's a fantastic close. Gentlemen, would you each like 30 seconds to wrap up and say goodbye?
Tim, you hit it first.
Oh, man, I was just going to give it to you. All right. I'll just say it's a genuine pleasure being on here. If anybody wants to go a little deeper on this topic, my latest blog on timohai.com is about how to deal with stressed out customers. And stress is something that I've been kind of focused on for a while, the last year in particular. And it's amazing to me how much stress is a part of the business life cycle. And if you don't understand how stress works, that's a major problem that impacts whatever the business problem that you're trying to solve. And you got to bring those two things together. So go check out the blog, timohai.com. And absolutely, genuinely grateful for the opportunity to be on the show today, Keenan.
Yes, thank you, Tim. Love seeing you, man. Love seeing that big smile, jovial face, brother.
And to take the other side, I'm a little pissed off I'm the sixth guest. I mean, I don't know what the ranking was. I don't know how this happened, but I'm going to add a contribution here at the end anyway. So we talked about difficult customers. We talked about difficult prospects, but I want to just point out one other piece to this. Some of the best customers you ever have are going to be difficult. They're going to push you to perform better than you've ever performed. They're going to ask you to take your company places your company's never even agreed that they're going to go. They're going to stretch you beyond your limits. They're going to make you work really hard to be that trusted advisor and to stake out that spot that we all want, that trusted advisor, consultative salesperson. Just because they're difficult, there's a difference between difficult people with a bad attitude that are dominators, that are going to destroy your culture, maybe beat up your inside team, and people who are going to stretch you because you really can create that value. So I just want to make that clear in your mind. Am I just getting stretched, and should I really be growing? Or is this somebody that's actually going to be detrimental for me to keep as a customer?
Yeah. Amen. Amen. That might even be a topic in itself someday, how to tell the difference between the two. And I think that's life in general, right? You can attach that to a coach or a mentor. You can attach that to your boss in business, right? You can attach that anywhere. We got to embrace the people and companies that stretch us and pull us forward because we're in this together versus those who will try to push us down. And sometimes they can feel the same. So I think that is brilliant insight, Anthony. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And yes, my man, we have got to do more of this and have more of our conversations about the things in the world that matter over and above business. So, again, love you, my brother from another mother. Kiki, my girl, anything you want to add? You are the bomb. Thank you for creating another great show.
Well, thank you. Gentlemen, I did have one question from Doug Lehman. He wanted to know if you had to pick one book, one video resource on prospecting, what would you recommend?
New Sales Simplified by Mike Weinberg.
Yeah. Mike owes you a check for that.
No, I would go. Mike's a great book. I'm writing one now that will hopefully get out there before the year's out. But yeah, no, I would totally go after Weinberg's.
Nice call.
Do you have a title yet that we can Google?
It'll be called The Power of Problems. I'm trying to uncrack the idea of how you really understand and tie problem solving and part of modern selling. But my co-author Brian Lambert and I just need time to sit down and finish it.
This will be your second book too, right? What's your book now?
I got Sales Chaos is out there. If you want to just think differently about sales It pulled chaos theory and blended into the process of modern selling.
Love that idea. Love that idea. All right. Anything else, Kiki? Do we have anything else?
Sales Chaos and a link to the sales blog, as well as that Gatling cartoon, are all on the showcase of this episode. So check that out.
Sweet, sweet, sweet. All right, Kiki, as always, thank you. Everybody, I hate to say next week. I got to come up with something better. Our next show, 2 weeks from today, I'm super excited about. We're bringing on Aaron Ross, author of Predictable Revenue. So if you're in SaaS, if you are our sales leader, you're a sales executive, and you want to accelerate revenue, you do not want to miss Mr. Ross. He is also with the early stage of launching his new book, so hopefully he'll give us some insight and some secrets into that. So with that said, folks, next week, Aaron Ross. But for this week, let's give it up for Anthony and for Tim, and of course the beautiful Kiki B and your Red Bull-driven Keenan. Thank you, thank you, thank you, people. I'm out.
Aloha.
Peace.
All right, see ya.